Good evening, Internet. Welcome back to another night of Talks about horror books for probably far too long. I'm That's all just over my shoulder. Tonight we're going to be talking about Absolution. This is the final book. Can you get it? Yeah, there you go. This is the final book in the Southern Reach series as of right now. It is kind of three books in one. It has a part one, which is 20 years before the formation of Area X and covers the biologist. Part two is about old Jim, who was featured in Acceptance as the person who plays the piano at the bar during the bar massacre. And then part three follows Lowry, who is mentioned in Authority and Acceptance as the sole survivor of the first expedition into Area X. So I'm probably going to be breaking this up into three parts. I'll leave timestamps down in the description probably, just so that you have a good idea of when I am talking about what. So the first part, Dead Town, is 20 years before the formation of Area X. It starts with the biologists, not the biologists that we know, but a group of biologists that were sent into Proto-Area X, apparently by Central, the kind of analog to the FBI and Central Intelligence Agency in this universe. Central has sent an expedition of biologists. They have the stated mission that they are to test equipment, cutting edge equipment, release 4 alligators into the area and track them. Both of these turn out to be kind of cover stories for the actual reason, which is to test hypnotic suggestion. So we have 4 alligators. The important one who comes back throughout the story is one nicknamed the Tyrant. It was originally named Smaug, but it was renamed the Tyrant so that it would be easier to talk about. The Tyrant is a huge alligator and will later become the pet familiar thing of a rogue actor called by old Jim and later by Jack Severance, the Rogue. So the biologists come into town and there's a rumor that they have sacks of gold, but they don't. They just have testing equipment, whatever they can carry on their backs. They move into an abandoned town, but the buildings in town are kind of creepy. And instead of going into town and living in the abandoned buildings like you would expect them to, they set up tents outside of town. And old Jim is like, this kind of feels like an FU to Central, but he can't tell if that was their intention or if they were just looking for something a little bit more comfortable. The old generator that is in town dies. It is sabotaged by somebody. At the time, they do not know who, but inside they find party balloons, different colored party balloons, which is, I guess, supposed to be a joke by the saboteur. It is creepy in the way that, like, if your car didn't start and you opened up the hood of your car and you found party balloons on the top of your engine, you would be creeped out. The Rogue arrives in town. He is wearing an old Southern Reach uniform, which is weird because the Southern Reach doesn't exist yet. According to, we get to see young Charlie, Saul's boyfriend. We get to see young Charlie and he says, "Oh, that guy, he stole a stick." The Rogue comes into the village bar. He does not talk to anybody. He is kind of sitting off by himself. The people in town kind of don't like him. They're like, "Oh, an outsider." We are introduced to the Mutter, who is one of the biologists who is foraging in the mud, and she is looking for clams, and she is startled when she hears a voice at the edge of the mud, and she looks up, and there is a white rabbit. When she goes to talk to the medic asks if it had like a pocket watch and kept saying that it was late, a reference to Wonderland. The biologists are metaphorically like entering Wonderland at this point. What freaks the Mutter out is that the white rabbit is sitting there grabbing clams out of the mud, tearing it open with its paw and then eating the clams, which is not something that rabbits typically do. As far as I know, rabbits are vegetarians, so that's not something that you would typically expect from a rabbit. It also has a small camera around its neck, much like the cameras that the Southern Reach placed around the white rabbits that they pushed into the border a couple decades into the future, when they were trying to test the capacity of the border. So it's possible that this is a rabbit from the Southern Reach experiment who has traveled backwards in time. There is a piano in town, and the biologists are playing the piano at night in order to kind of unwind and take part in merriment. But they are freaked out when there is a return melody from the swamps outside of town, a ghostly, out of tune, out of sync melody returning from the swamp. And we will find out very quickly that this is Man-Boy Slim, one of the people who lives in the Forgotten Coast and frequents the village bar. But at the time, the biologists don't know that. They just hear this ghostly, like out of sync, out of tune piano coming from the swamp, and it freaks them out. We get to see the village bar a little bit. There's a line about birds and bats. The medic in this expedition, he uses hypnotic phrases, the same ones that we will see the psychologist and Lowry and other people use in the future. Is your house in order? Is there something in your eye? There's no reward in the risk. We'll see these phrases throughout the book. It seems like Jack is just handing them out to whoever he thinks could use them. We also find out later that old Jim has his own specific hypnotic suggestion trigger. So we'll get to that eventually. There is a torrential downpour over the camp at one point, and the campers all take place, or they all take cover within their tents. But while this is happening, more rabbits are spawning, and it's freaking them out. So they're looking for a solution to the rabbits, and so they decide that they're going to take flamethrowers. They're going to go out and they're going to burn the rabbits, and they're going to take the cameras from the rabbits, and they'll examine these cameras. So that's their mission. They're going to go out. They're going to kill off the population of rabbits. They're going to take the cameras, see what the cameras are all about, and then put all of this behind them. That's the mission. Unfortunately, the next day, all of the rabbits that they killed have been replaced by brand new rabbits, also wearing cameras, and now eating the dead bodies of the rabbits that they killed, which is really creepy. They see the tyrant, the alligator. The tyrant has been eating the rabbits and been eating the cameras. And they speculate that the tyrant eating the rabbits and eating the cameras is changing its behavioral patterns. When they examine the videos, they find that the videos are, one, changing, and two, showing the Forgotten Coast as this abandoned, like untouched parcel of nature, much like it will be once Area X falls. So are these cameras relating video from the future? Is this video of alternate futures? Is this video of possible futures? What is this video about? The rogue, at this point, the biologists all gather out in this field, trying to put down the rabbits, trying to like put an end to all of this stuff that's freaking them out. And the rogue and the tyrant kind of appear out of the swamp, and the rogue shouts something, and old Jim, as he's going through this footage, he can't quite make out what the rogue is shouting at the biologists, but we know it's probably the word annihilation. And annihilation, if you remember, is hypnotic suggestion to induce suicidal thoughts. So it kind of seems like the rogue is trying to induce suicidal suicidal action on the part of the biologists. And he runs through the fields, and as the biologists are like approaching him with their flamethrowers and their weapons, as soon as he gets close to them, they kind of like fling back. They're knocked back by just the force of his voice, like he's a dragonborn in Skyrim. And the tyrant is also running with him as though it's like his pet or his companion. There's a weird focus on the color green in this book. Green is often like the symbolic connection with Area X and the Forgotten Coast. I don't remember it being that strong of a connection in the other books. Maybe I just read over it, but I don't remember the color green being like the symbolic link to Area X. But in this book, the color green is quite clearly like, this is Area X. This is something alien. This is something that's interfering on reality. There is a line about the rabbits not being rabbits. This links back to, I can't remember if it was authority or acceptance. There was the plant that was not a plant, but we saw it as a plant. The signifier and the signified are not matching. There's this break in reality between what a thing is and what we perceive it to be. And also it kind of links back to the doppelgangers as well. We see the person, but it's not the actual person. It's not the person who we know. It is a facsimile. It is something that has the same form, but not the same identity, right? So the whole of this first section of the book is encompassing this dead town tragedy. The biologists sent by Central go in to test equipment, and while they are doing this, they are being experimented on with hypnotic suggestion. We know that the medic is in on it. We know that the rogue is a foreign agent. The rogue has contact with the Mutter at one point in the village bar. Old Jim wonders why they bothered to bug the village bar. We'll get to that part later as well. There is this event with the rabbits. It freaks the biologists out. In their panic, they go out to the field. The rogue comes through and he shouts all of them down. The tyrant comes through and he stomps all of them. At the end of it, the rains pour, and there are only four survivors. There are four survivors, two team leads, one medic, and then the Mutter. So these four are the only survivors. The other 20, and we'll later learn that it's actually 21, the remaining 20 or 21 biologists are all killed either by natural forces or unnatural forces, is what the book says. So that is the first part of this book. And you probably have already made a lot of connections to the other book. I'm going to go through that at the end, but I do want to point out that there are several like false connections within this book as well. And we'll talk about that a little bit in the Old Jim section when he is thinking about the monkey's paw. But I just wanted to point out that like you can make connections in this part of the book, but try to like hold on to those. So the second book, or the second part of this book, The False Daughter, this is 18 months before the arrival of Area X. Old Jim, who we were introduced to in Acceptance as the person playing piano at the village bar, it turns out that he is an agent of Central, and apparently he was, in the old days, a good one. However, his wife is gone and he cannot remember her, and his daughter has recently disappeared and ghosted him. His daughter is Eleanor Cassandra Kavanagh, who is nicknamed Cass. Old Jim has a connection to Jack, who he worked with at Central, and he also knows, by sight at least, Jackie Severance, Jack's daughter. Jack, we know from accept, or not from acceptance. Jack we know from authority, yeah, from acceptance as well. Jack, we know from Authority and Acceptance, has kind of a thing for psychics. He likes to use them. And he has been putting missions in the Forgotten Coast using psychics, which we know as the Seance and Science Brigade, where they are putting the psychics on Failure Island in order to do something. We don't really know what. There is the piano. Jack has arranged a piano for old Jim while he is at Central. Old Jim goes and plays the piano while he's like studying this archival footage of Deadtown. And he plays this song Winter Journey. And this is the recurring theme that we will see throughout the book. Kind of whenever he's trying to get his thoughts in order, or whenever he wants to like do something, he goes to the piano and he plays the song Winter Journey. And the lyrics to Winter Journey, he has his own version of the lyrics. In the later part of the book, he will like find a different version, and it will deeply unsettle him. Old Jim is being sent to the Forgotten Coast as Old Jim. He has a secret mission. He is to find and eliminate the rogue, the person who at Deadtown was shouting the word annihilation, the person who is accompanied by the grand alligator, the tyrant, and the person who Central is apparently trying to lay the blame for the Deadtown tragedy. There's a little bit of information that we get about the team leaders of Deadtown who survived. They left the site, Active Area X. They left the Deadtown site, and they were found in a hotel room several miles away. And they had one of the cameras with them. They were trying to destroy it. And there is an interview with them where people are like, well, what about the enemy? Or had you made contact with the enemy? And they're like, what enemy? What are you talking about? Everything that happened to them from their point of view was either natural or supernatural. But Central, being Central, when you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. They think of it as an invasion. Something has done this to Deadtown. And so the team leaders can't give them any information that they want, because what Central is looking for is not the reality. And so Central sends the two team leaders to different islands where they will live in isolation. And they have their own like duties on those islands. There's like, I think that they say that there's like a radio tower or something that they're supposed to man there. But they will not have contact with the outside world. They will not have contact with civilization. They will not have contact with each other. And so, yeah, tough break for them. This is all assuming that what Central has in their records is correct and not a cover story for having murdered these two team leaders. But you gotta go with what you're given. When he gets to the Forgotten Coast, old Jim moves into his house. He takes over the bar. The day after he arrives, he is greeted by a clone, Central created clone of his daughter. It is a Central agent who has been, her hair has been cut to look like his daughter's. Her facial structure has been slightly altered to look like his daughter's. And she is going by the name Cass. So she is meant to like resemble his daughter. And he is not happy about this. He is a little bit freaked out by this. He does not want her there. He is constantly just like rejecting her at the start. And at one point he brings her into his house and he's like, okay, you want to be my daughter? Well, here. And he dumps out a box of letters that he's written to his daughter over the time that she's been missing while he's been looking for her. And he's like, I wrote all of these for you. And the false Cass is like, Jesus, this is fucked up. There is a episode. This is probably the most gory episode, apart from the massacre. It's probably the most gory that this series has gotten so far. Uh, we get a thing about house centipedes. There is a woman who has taken a fall on her bike. She is one of the Seance and Science Brigade members. She has taken a fall on her bike, and something has happened to her. And that night, she is like uh, terrified that she keeps feeling these house centipedes all over her and over her leg. And when she goes to the bathroom, she can see them and all of this stuff. And so she eventually takes an axe and chops off her own leg to get the house centipedes off of her. So that's awful. Um, Old Jim is kind of taken aback by the revelation that the Seance and Science Brigade on Failure Island, if you remember from the previous book, Failure Island was where the first lighthouse was, but it wasn't successful. And so they took the lens from the lighthouse there, transferred it to the Forgotten Coast, and the Seance and Science Brigade has made Failure Island their home. Part of the reason why they're out on Failure Island is because they have submarines, they have submersibles, and they are going down into the ocean and doing something in these submersibles. God knows what. We get to see Henry and Suzanne again. Henry Cage, or Kage, I'm assuming it's supposed to be Cage. Henry Cage is a preppy, rich asshole. Suzanne is with him. In Acceptance, I kind of got the feeling that Suzanne was the one who was kind of manipulating people. She was kind of the face, and then Henry was kind of the mastermind. In this one, it seems like Henry is the forceful one, but maybe that's just the experience we get from Old Jim's point of view. I'm not sure if it's like a mischaracterization between the two books or anything like that. It just seems inconsistent between them. But it could also be a point of view kind of thing. We get to see Gloria and her mother Trudy. If you remember, Gloria was the little girl who was hanging around the lighthouse when Saul was working there. She would eventually grow up to be the director of the Southern Reach, and she would eventually become the psychologist on the 12th expedition in Annihilation. We get to see the Monkey's Elbow Band again. This was the band that was playing during the massacre at the bar in Acceptance. Monkey's Elbow Band is an offshoot or named after a reference to the monkey's paw. They say something like they wanted to be the monkey's elbow because the monkey's paw is so unlucky. The gimmick of the band is that somebody from the village is chosen to play Commander Thistle, the lead singer. And he wears a mask so that you don't know who he is. And he wears a big baggy trench coat so you don't know who he is. And he goes up on stage and he sings, but there's a different Commander Thistle basically every year. They choose somebody else to do the Commander Thistle thing, and then they cycle them out year after year. The Monkey's Paw is a short story that Old Jim, he thinks about the monkey's elbow and he's like, I should reread the Monkey's Paw. And he rereads it. But when he rereads it, he's not reading it like I would, wanting to like dive into it and close read it and pull out the information, pull out the details, pull out the setting, pull out the characterization, do a dissection on it and pull out what I could. He is reading it like a spy. He sees like the business that the dad is doing as something transgressive. He thinks about like repressive regimes and how they might get around it using code, things like that, things that you wouldn't normally think about while reading a short story like that. And that was where I started to think about false connections. And so we get the hypnotic suggestion from the medic in the first part of the book. And so I had started thinking like, is this Cheney? Is this somebody that we know? And as far as I can tell, it's not. And there's things like that come up throughout the book where there is a connection, but it doesn't seem to be a direct connection. It's just an echo of what somebody else has said in the past. Manboy Slim, there is a confrontation at the bar. Old Jim punches Manboy Slim in the stomach after Manboy Slim is harassing him. And he says, I want to know what the mutter showed you. And Manboy Slim is like, she showed me a video from the camera. And he says, what was on the video? And he says, I saw a view of the area from overhead as if it was attached to a bird, but it was completely abandoned. There was nobody here. It looked like nobody had ever been here. It looked completely desolate, completely abandoned. I don't know how to explain it. We know that this is a video of Area X, and it may even be the same video that we saw in Authority, where there was a clip of the camera flying high above Area X before Lowry extracted from Area X. So that's creepy. Old Jim tells Manboy Slim, tell the mutter that I'm looking for her and that she can call me. And when she calls me, I'll have questions for her. Manboy Slim kind of slinks off. We don't know if he's ever actually going to deliver that message, but later we'll find out that he does. One other thing that he says before he slinks off, Old Jim is interrogating Manboy Slim about the music that he played on the piano at Deadtown in order to freak out the biologists. And Manboy Slim says, well, you should know it. It's the same song that you always play. And Old Jim's like, that's impossible. But it seems like Winter's Journey is part of the hypnotic suggestion experiment that Jack Severance is running. So keep that in mind. Old Jim makes a meeting with the medic from Deadtown. He is now stationed on Failure Island as one of the people who is a true believer in what is going on. He is still working for Central. He is still an embedded agent, and he is there among the Seance and Science Brigade. He doesn't really give any good information. He's kind of very straightforward. He's the Bond weapon type of spy. He's not the thinker. He's not someone who meditates about his missions. He's not someone who is like very introspective or reflective on his missions. He's just someone who kind of does what he's told for the most part. Old Jim goes over Jackie Severance, his handler, back to Jack and says, hey, I need information. I need you to get me whatever you can from the Deadtown tragedy. And so Jack gives him a storage locker silo full of old, samples and pictures and things from the Deadtown tragedy that Area X was, or that Central was able to recover. And it's in this old silo at the edge of this, the storage place. And the lot out back is filled with potholes. And all of these potholes have liquid pulling at the bottom of them. And they feel wrong. When Old Jim and Cass go to retrieve the materials, they're looking around and they notice that these potholes feel off to them. They give this storage locker the nickname Old Decomp because the samples inside are rotting and they have this rotting smell. And they have to cover their nose in order to get inside. One of the important things that they recover from Old Decomp is the alligator tracker. It is a bobber on the end of a harness. And one of the things that Old Jim has in his possession is a tracker for this old bobber. And so he goes down back to his house and he is periodically checking this tracker for the alligators that were released by the biologists. One thing that they find is that the cases that the mutter kept, the one who first met with the rabbits, the mutter's cases are misfiled. She apparently, in the later parts of her mission, was just putting things anywhere, even if they didn't match. So things would be labeled like butterflies and it would be clams. Things would have entirely like mischaracterized labels. So is that the Mutter like losing her sanity? Is that the Mutter intentionally trying to mislabel things so that they can't be characterized? We don't really have an explanation for that. It's just one of those things that kind of sticks out. Um, we get a phone call from the Mutter, and she talks about the rogue. We know that they spoke at the village bar at one point during the Dead Town expedition, but we don't know what they said to each other. So he asks, old Jim asks the Mutter, what did he say to you? What did the rogue say to you? And he said, I'm sorry. It's supposed to be all different now, but it's not. And I'm trying to make it right, or something along those lines. And so the Mutter relays that information to old Jim, and she's like, does that help? He's like, I don't think so. The Mutter is slowly unraveling over the course of the conversation with old Jim until she tries to convince him that she shot herself, but he doesn't buy it. And so eventually she's like, leave me alone. I'm never talking to you again. Goodbye, and hangs up on him. One thing that they have seen that kind of freaks them out, I can't remember where this part was. I have it in my notes, but I don't remember who said it. One like image from the book, it might be Manboy Slim or it might be the Mutter. At one point, they see the rogue sitting in a boat, and he has a bucket of the cameras collected from the rabbits, and he shucks them like they were clams, and then he feeds them to the tyrant who eats them. So he goes through this whole process of taking these Southern Reach cameras, peeling the skin off of them as if they were like a clam, and then feeding them to the alligator. How many of these cameras are there, first off? Because that it seems like you would need quite a lot of those. And second off, like, what is the purpose of this? And it's made a little bit more weird because I think it's described as him spitting into the bucket and causing them to heat up before he eventually like picks them up and splits them open. But it's like, what is this image? There is a journal from the Mutter that was recovered from Dead Town. This is supposed to be kept at Central, but old Jim, when he was studying the archival footage of Dead Town, decided that he was going to sneak it out of Central. He took it with him to the Forgotten Coast. He put it into a safe so that he could revisit it at a later time. After his conversation with the Mutter on the phone, he goes to open up the journal and study it again. However, all of the pages have been cut with an X-Acto knife. He is not quite sure what happened, who has done this, who would even have access to his safe. He goes through a list of suspects. Is it Jack fucking with them? Is it the medic? Is it Henry? He doesn't really know. I think that it is probably Henry or possibly Jack, but keep in mind that there are things happening behind the scenes. I think that before this, Cass finds a pair of sunglasses sitting on the concrete in front of her car that belonged to the previous Central agent that old Jim took over the position from before he exploded. His sunglasses are sitting on the pavement outside of her car when she comes out from the store. And so she knows that somebody has placed them there to send her a message, but she doesn't know what the message is. So there are things happening behind the scenes. People are making moves. Things are happening. We don't always get to see that part of it. It's spy stuff, but there are things happening off camera. Old Jim pulls out the alligator tracker and he flicks it on, and he's expecting that nothing is going to come from it. And it lights up, and he looks down at it and he sees that the tyrant's tracker is currently right in the middle of Dead Town. And as he's watching it, as he is looking down at the alligator tracker starts moving towards his house. Creepy as fuck. So he reacts appropriately. He takes the alligator tracker and he tosses it in his backyard, and he's like, take it, you fucker. One thing that I want to mention while we are at the house, Across from old Jim's new house is this bio waste facility. I think that it's defunct. I think it's supposed to be like nobody works there anymore, but it's quite near his house. So keep that part in mind as well. Um, One night at the bar, he has three separate confrontations. So he has a confrontation with Manboy Slim, who comes in drunk and is kind of badgering him. And it doesn't really lead anywhere, but he's kind of like, he's ribbing old Jim pretty hard. And then he goes outside. Old Jim goes outside to kind of catch his breath and get away from people. And Henry is standing outside and he confronts old Jim and he's like, "You're the head honcho from Central, right? Why aren't you giving us more money? Why are you like standing in the way of our progress? Why are you not funding the Seance and Science Brigade? We need the money or we'll never make any progress." And old Jim's like, "I don't know what you're talking about. And please just leave me alone. I'm not standing in the way of your money. Go away." Like, this is not a productive conversation for either of us. And Henry eventually begrudgingly heads out and into the night and disappears so that he is leaving old Jim alone. And then old Jim goes back into the bar, but he's still not feeling like 100%. He still doesn't want to be around people. He tells his second in command, "You watch the bar, I'm going to head out." And he goes out the back door. There's this little bridge that connects the village bar with like the storage room out back. And he is standing on that little bridge when he sees out of the corner of his eye a person, and he looks up to find the Rogue, the person from the Dead Town tragedy who shouted annihilation at all the biologists. The Rogue is standing there, and the Rogue opens his mouth and a bunch of hypnotic suggestion words just fly out of his mouth, and Jim opens his mouth and a bunch of hypnotic suggestion words just fly out of his mouth. And we don't get to know what those words or phrases are, or if they're anything, if they mean anything, what they're doing, but they're like fighting each other with their voices. Cass, hearing a commotion, comes out onto the bridge, fires a shot into the Rogue, and he tumbles over the bridge. And then old Jim is just left there, like, what's the phrase? Catatonically. Whatever this Rogue has said to him, it's affected his mind so deeply that he's just gone down as if he's been shot. Cass takes old Jim back to her apartment. She nurses him back to health. It seems like they are bonding quite a bit. In the storage unit, they find a camera, which was not there when the two of them had visited before. So it seems like somebody has put that there. I think that this is when the old decomp storage unit gets burned down, but I could be wrong about that. But they find a camera that was not there before, and that is now evidence. And they make up their mind that they are going to go to Dead Town. Cass reports that the blood from the scene of the bridge, she had it analyzed, and it is not human blood. It is alligator blood, which is creepy. Is the Rogue an alligator? Is this a case of an alligator turning into a man? We've seen men turn into alligators before, but can it work in reverse? He tells her about the alligator tracker in City Hall in Dead Town. They go to visit it. They find the alligator tracks. They find a symbol of a stylized lighthouse in green, and they find a list of names, including old Jim's true name. On the wall is a version of the lyrics of Winter's Journey that old Jim is not familiar with. So this is kind of like the doppelganger of Winter's Journey. It seems like the same song, but it doesn't have the same lyrics, and it greatly disturbs old Jim. And he flies out of City Hall, and he is like freaking out when Cass catches up with them, and she's like, "Hey, you scared me." And he's like, "I'm sorry, I scared myself." So they go back to the Forgotten Coast. He is going into his office when he is knocked on the back of the head and falls unconscious. When he wakes up, he finds himself in a small room with Commander Thistle, the singer of the Monkey's Elbow Band, shoving people into barrels. And these are apparently either dead people or people who are under hypnotic suggestion, as he is shoving them into these barrels to dispose of them. Jack wakes up. He seems to not be affected by whatever Commander Thistle is saying. Commander Thistle turns around, notices he's awake, and starts just saying hypnotic phrases at him to try to get him to go into the barrel willingly. And Jack's like, no, I'm not going to do that. There is a big spy shootout as old Jim like shoots at Commander Thistle and stabs it at him. And eventually Commander Thistle goes down. He talks about this faction within Central called the Brutes. It seems like whatever the Brutes are, they are not fans of Jack Severance. And so Jack is making moves as spy games are going on. He is using the Forgotten Coast to funnel money out of Central into his own like shadow organization. He's using Commander Thistle, and I saw online that there were a lot of theories about who this person is. There is one concrete like answer, and I think that the answer is right. I didn't clock it when I was reading through, but if you read through and you know who the Commander Thistle is, good job. Like you beat me. So Jack is using Commander Thistle as his cleanup operative. He's using this this whole Forgotten Coasts operation as like a money funneling venture, and he is. It seems like he's somehow using the Seance and Science Brigade to grow an organic, like homegrown spy organization. Old Jim stumbles out of the room that he is in, and he finds that he is about 300 feet from his own home. He is in the defunct bio-waste processing center. So he just walks home. When he opens the door, he finds Jackie Severance sitting inside his living room in the dark. Classic spy shit. This book really does go from like the proto expedition into like spy shit. Jackie tells him that she's being recalled to Central and that he needs to give her something that she can give to Central. He is not able to give her anything. He's like, I'll keep working the case. You just go to Central, tell them that everything's fine, tell them that we're going to keep working the case. Jackie tells him that there were 2 Seance and Science Brigade submersibles that were on fire. They caught on fire. It seems like the psychics who were going down in these submersibles set the fires themselves intentionally. And then because other psychics up on the island were connected with them, those psychics who are up on the island have gone into comas. And she says that there is a fire in the Seance and Science Brigade building. And old Jim says, where did the fire start? And she says that it would have started in the research room, which is where he sent the alligator tracker that he found in Old Decomp. So that alligator bobber that he found in Old Decomp went to Failure Island, and then somehow it started a fire in their compound. It seems like the alligator tracker is the cause, but as usual, we don't know if it's causation or correlation. Jackie is recalled to Central, and we later find out that Cass is also recalled to Central. She is now going to make her debriefing at Central, and so old Jim is left alone. But Cass has given him a coded message through one of his coworkers saying, please feed my turtles while I'm away. So he goes and he breaks into her apartment and he finds her turtles. She has 2 turtles that she has named after her handlers, Jack and Jackie. He reaches into the turtle tank and he's combing through the gravel at the bottom of the turtle tank, and he finds keys for another apartment. And he goes and he finds Cass's real apartment. Cass has a false apartment and a real apartment, like a doppelganger. In Cass's real apartment, he finds a hobby board, the classic like pictures and red twine hobby board where Cass is working the case, and it seems like she's on the cusp of like solving whatever it is. He starts to think that he's kind of a failure because he hasn't made nearly as many connections as she has. But one of the things that he finds on her board is that in Dead Town there is a hidden room in Central Hall, and that it seems similar to the hidden mechanism in the old decomp storage site. So he thinks that whoever's made this hidden room in Central is someone who, or in Dead Town, is someone who works for Central. It's somebody who has experience with Central, somebody who worked as an agent possibly in the past. Hey guys, after recording the first video, or in the middle of recording the first video, I realized that I never talked about what happened with Henry Cage and the medic. Henry Cage and the medic come to take old Jim from his house, and they're like, we need information. We need you to show us where things are. And he's like, I'll tell you what. There's stuff hidden. There's money hidden at the old silo storage unit, old decomp. We put it into bags. We buried it at the bottom of these potholes in the parking lot. You just have to go there and dig it up and you'll find it. And so they drive him out to this parking lot, and the parking lot, the shape of the potholes we find out is the same shape as what is at the like pentagram room in the city hall at Dead Town. Like, it maps approximately the same. It's not exactly the same, but it maps approximately the same. So Henry Cage and the medic drive him out there, and the medic is planning to kill old Jim. He knows that. He's aware of all of that. And he's just trying to get like away and get an advantage. And so the medic tells Henry he needs to go down into the potholes and dig. Henry is a little perturbed by that. He's like, I'm not supposed to be the one doing manual labor. And the medic is like, well, go do it or we're not going to get our money. And so Henry goes and he's like digging in one of these potholes, and he gets like sucked into this supernatural like vortex that comes out of one of the potholes that he has dug into. There's like this strange alien energy that pulses up through it, and he gets caught into it. And while he is caught into it, he is like reaching out for help towards the medic, and the medic steps forward, and then old Jim pushes the medic into Henry, and both of them are sucked into this strange energy vortex that maps approximately on the pentagram that old Jim found at Central. So it seems like these potholes in this parking lot at the storage silo, these are also like a conduit of energy. I don't think that we've seen something like this aside from the lighthouse lens, but it seems like this is somehow sucking people into it. There's a reason why old Jim and Cass had a bad feeling when they first got there and saw the potholes and had that like intuitive understanding that something was off about them. It seems like they are like when in Authority, when the biologist pukes up the portal into Area X, it seems like something like that may have happened here. And the two of them have now been either disintegrated by this alien vortex or they've been sucked into Area X somehow. So keep in mind that that may be a future plot thread, or that just may be the end of Henry and the medic. However, later, when old Jim has had his experience with the rogue, he is on his way into town, and Henry and Suzanne pass by him in a car. So one of these Henrys is possibly a doppelganger as well, or maybe old Jim has passed into an alternate timeline. There's a lot of ambiguity here, so I'm not sure what the actual answer is, but there is a double of Henry Cage, one who was sucked into the pothole in the parking lot of old Decomp, and one who was thrown off the lighthouse by Saul on the night of the transformation when the border came down. So keep those things in mind going forward. I'm going to throw it over to Past Andrew. And so he goes to Deadtown to look for this hidden room. Inside, he finds what appears to be a pentagram of different samples, names on the wall, like there were outside of the room. And he also finds a puddle in the corner. And as he's there, the tyrant, the huge alligator, comes out of this puddle in the corner, and it takes old Jim in its mouth through the puddle and into this like mysterious alien realm, like Puff the Magic Dragon or something. It doesn't hurt him. It just delivers him to the rogue that he's been searching for. And he sees the rogue, and he sees a wound in the rogue's chest, and he knows that Cass has shot the rogue fatally. So the rogue is being kept alive unnaturally now, and he communicates with Jim. He gives him a vision of alternate timelines where this Area X that we know is traveling back into the past and colonizing the past, just how it colonized the present. And so he gives old Jim this vision of doing something heroic and playing his part within the timeline and doing what he needs as like a canon event in order to ensure that Area X is eventually defeated. And so old Jim, he has this vision. He knows what he needs to do. He goes back to the village bar, and he's playing the piano there. And he's there on that night that the massacre at the bar takes place. And he's just playing piano until his fingers are bleeding all over the keys. And he becomes annihilated. Tragedy of old Jim. I do really like this part where they've taken, where Jeff has taken a side character from Acceptance and given him this whole backstory, and also fleshed out Jack's kind of like modus operandi. We're going to find out a little bit more about that in the third part, but I do really like this section. I really like the character work that he's done with old Jim. I really like the character work with Cass. There's a lot like, this is probably on par for me with Acceptance. Like it's so good. This one section of the book, I love this part so much. It has that satisfying character work, it has that satisfying build, and it has that satisfying ending. I'm going to take a drink before we get on to the next part because my throat is feeling parched. I am drinking hibiscus cranberry tea, by the way. All right. So we get to the third section of the book. This is called The First and the Last. It is the first because it's the first expedition, and it's the last because it's the last surviving member. This is the journal or stream of consciousness, like spewing of James Lowry. This one is not as much fun to read as the second part. James Lowry has this nervous tick where he says fuck a lot. And so a lot of the sentences are, Sky did this, fuck. Landry did this, fuck. And it's like, I get it. Like eventually my brain started like censoring out the fucks and just like moving on to the next line. But then I would have to go back and reread because it would scan out like whatever. Lowry thinks about the border between Area X and the outside as a type of intestine, which is not an image that we've gotten in the previous novels. We've seen it as like the swirling abyss. We've seen it as a door. We have seen like visions of dead bodies and corpses and skeletons in this like in between liminal space. But we've never seen it as intestines before. So I don't know if that's Lowry like being metaphoric or if he actually sees intestines between Area X and the outside. Lowry, before the mission, he is introduced to Whitby. You might remember Whitby from Authority and Acceptance. No, just from Authority. No, he was in Acceptance a little bit. He had the mouse in Acceptance. Whitby is kind of a nervous older researcher who has the file on the terroir of Area X. This theory that like Area X had to have been in the Forgotten Coast because of the unique characteristics of the Forgotten Coast. And that maps onto like the terroir of wine grapes and the environment that wine grapes are grown in. And so he tries to take that theory of the terroir and apply it to Area X. But John Control says, this is kind of nonsense. It doesn't make any sense. But then when he gets into Area X, he's kind of like gripping onto it like it's the sacred text. So that's Whitby. Whitby in this case is an alternative for the missioners. He could be on the mission, but he's kind of the stand-in in case somebody else drops out. He tells James Lowry the story of a chicken before they sent anybody into Area X. They wanted to put organic matter into it, so they ran a autonomous drone into it to make sure that it was safe, and then they put a chicken into it. And the chicken ran into it, but it got halfway and it stopped, and it started coming back. And when it came out on this side of the border, it was not a chicken anymore. It was something completely different. And he says, maybe it wasn't a chicken, maybe it was a rooster, but whenever it got out, it was no longer recognizable as like an organic thing. So going into this doorway for a creature that does not have any intelligence, like warped it into something unrecognizable. Super creepy. I also like the word alternative for Whitby. He's in the future, we know that he'll have a confrontation with his own doppelganger, and we don't know whether it's the real Whitby who comes back or if it's the alternative Whitby, if it's not Whitby. And that is kind of like the paranoia of the other novels. And having Whitby as an alternative expeditioner, I think really fits with the what we know about him in the future. The leader of this expedition is a girl named Sky. Her and Lowry hook up before the mission, and then Lowry is like making these romantic gestures towards her. He buys her flowers. He buys her a little ring. She's kind of like nervously laughing at him, like, "Oh, I didn't know you were so like, I didn't realize you were someone for grand gestures." And he's like, "Well, I guess I am." Landry is another expeditioner. Landry gives him drugs. Landry is apparently like the drug guru. He can both like procure a lot of drugs, and he can also make sure they don't show up on urine tests, and he can also smuggle them into Area X. So Landry is your drug guy. We get introduced to Karen Hargraves. Karen Hargraves is an expeditioner. She has a story about Jackie Severance. Apparently, when the border of Area X came down, it cut Jackie Severance's car in half as she was exiting the area. Hargraves says that it was so close that it cut the back off of her skirt, leaving her panties exposed. Lowry kind of thinks that that's bullshit. It's just a story, but kind of a funny image, knowing what we know about Jackie Severance. There are briefing videos that they watch, and Lowry, he is on drugs, so he's not affected by it as much. But there are hypnotic suggestions and phrases in these briefing videos that they're watching. Things about like, is your house in order, risk in the reward, things like that. And he hears them and he's like, man, that's weird phrasing, but he doesn't clock it as hypnotic suggestion. It's implied that the only reason Lowry is on the mission is because he is Jack's boy. He doesn't really have any special skills. He says that Jack chose him for the mission because he always like keeps his head cool. We will see that that is not true as soon as they get into Area X. Jack refers to him as Barrel Boy and Thistleweed, which is a reference to Captain Thistle shoving people into barrels. We find out a little bit more about research and development working on cameras. R&D is making cameras that were based on the cameras from Deadtown, which is a bit of a time loop because those were Southern Reach cameras that were sent back in time. And then the Southern Reach is using those cameras to build new cameras, kind of like Terminator 2. So weird time loop thing happening there. So the expedition goes through the border into Area X, and the first person to die, the first victim, is John Ehrlichson. John has written his name on a strip of duct tape on the front of his decontamination suit. So they all get into the decontamination suits. They're all in these suits, and they traverse the border into Area X. He is the first victim inside of Area X, and if you'll remember from the other books, it seems like Area X doesn't like names. So him writing his name on duct tape and putting it on the front of his decontamination suit, it seems like that is something that has upset Area X, and his decontamination suit gets like vacuum sealed to his face. It is fusing with his flesh, and he becomes fused to his suit. So as soon as Lowry sees this, he starts shouting, like, take the suit off. Get out of your suits. Everybody get out of your suits. And he's yelling it into his radio. So he sees people like holding their ears as they recoil from it. And he is like, get out of your suits. And he strips naked right there. And other members of the expedition start stripping naked, getting out of their suits so that they don't become fused to it as well. And Skye, who is the leader of the expedition, is like, stay in your suits. Like, wait for more information. Stay in your suits. And nobody is listening to her. And so she eventually like gets out of her suit, and Lowry realizes that it's probably embarrassing for her because she's supposed to be the leader, and now everybody has seen her naked. So how can she still wield authority if like everybody has this vision of her? And she's like, I fucking hate you. Not off to a great start. We find out that there was a victim before John. Dr. Rogers was lost crossing the border. So maybe she turned back, maybe she turned sideways, maybe the border just didn't let her go through. But she was lost somewhere on the journey into Area X. This was interesting because it's not something that we've seen in the other books that I remember. The members of the expedition have different visions of the lighthouse. Most of them agree that it's no longer a lighthouse, but they can't agree on what it actually is. And they see this strange green light coming from it. So what's up with that? They make their way to the base camp, which we have seen in the other novels. There is the question of who set up the base camp before they were there. It's implied that this was at one point like a fort or an abandoned fort, and they just recommissioned it as base camp once they got inside. But it seems like there may have been an expedition prior to the first expedition in order to set up the fort. Sherry Binder is another victim. She is eaten by an alligator in the camp. James Lowry thinks about like, how do you get eaten by an alligator? They're not aggressive. Like, why would an alligator come into camp? Was she taunting it? What's going on? James Lowry is a bit of an asshole, if I haven't said that yet. James is given a Bible that has a secret mission from Jack in it. He has five missions. So one of his missions is to find old Jim. Apparently, he is given access to the False Daughter Project information. He is told about what happened to Jim's wife. She was killed in action. She was another member of Central. She was an agent of Central. He thinks that Jim fucked up the mission somehow, and that's why his wife died, and so he deserved to have her die. Asshole, if I haven't said that before. Something interesting about the debriefing on old Jim is that Central says that old Jim's piano playing infected members of Central after the fact through recordings. So they had the Village Bar bugged. He was playing piano on the night of the massacre. He played it until his fingers bled, and everybody in the bar was killed by this invisible Proto Area X force. And then via the recording of the bug at the village bar, he was able to infect people outside of Area X. And we don't really get to know what infected means. Maybe it's like in Lost where Rousseau thinks that people who are acting weird are infected, or people who have changed their personalities are infected, but maybe it's something more sinister. We don't really get to see it. So his secret mission is to find old Jim, find the money, find Henry Cage, who was Henry and Suzanne, the guy from Acceptance, and find any information about either Serum Bliss, which is the code name for the Deadtown tragedy, or the Seance and Science Brigade. So he's looking for a lot of different disparate things in Area X. It seems like old Jim, the more people that he sends in here, the more he loses and the less information it has. Or not old Jim, Jack Severance. It seems like the more people that Jack Severance sends in here, the more questions that he has about the area and the more people that he needs to send. It's like a vicious cycle. The radios, this is a good one. So this is a short vignette within the expedition. They start hearing voices on the radios, and it's their voices talking back to them. And Lowry is like, well, it's just a recording. Someone is like recording our voices whenever we talk to each other, and then they're playing it back to us. And she says, no, it's not a recording, it's live. And he says, well, how do you explain that? And she's like, I think whatever is making these voices is like trying to communicate with us. He's like, well, what do we do? She can't think of anything. And so eventually they put the radios into a box and they shove them into a swamp. But the next morning, the box of the radios is just there on the base camp again. And so they take them out and they start shooting them with guns, because what else are you going to do? Old Jim, or not old Jim, James Lowry. Lowry tells us, the audience, not his fellow expeditioners, he still has his satellite phone on him. And this will become important later, because it becomes important in Authority and Acceptance, because it's not a phone at that point. It looks like a phone. It's one of those weird like plants, or one of the other things where it looks like something, but we know that it's not. And it gets up on it. It gets up and moves on its own. It makes noises in the kitchen. It makes noises on the ceiling. It looks like a phone, but after it comes back from Area X, it's no longer a phone. The Living Wall. This is a short thing where one night they're sitting around the fire and they're trying to make conversation and ignore or forget the seriousness of the situation. And this living wall starts like building around them, and it is apparently eating expedition members. And James Lowry notices it, and he, in his mind, jumps on it and starts like scratching at it and biting at it and trying to like get it to unhand the camp and get away from them. In his mind, he's like being a ferocious monster. He's like trying to fight it off like an animal. And the next day they show him a tape of what he was doing, and it appears that he is humping this living wall and kissing it and like being very weird and not at all aggressive towards it. And so the members of the camp kind of like start seeing him as a co-conspirator of Area X, or maybe like an enemy of theirs. Bizarre little episode. The next day, there are goo doppelgangers. They are on their way to the lighthouse, and they come upon a like field of goo, and from this goo rises doppelgangers of the dead members of their mission, and they are like coming up the hill towards the expedition. And Sky says, wait until they get close and then we'll dispatch them with guns. But James Lowry thinks that he's an action hero, and so he starts fanning his automatic rifle across them, trying to kill them. But of course they're goo, so they just get back up. And then the guns, Area X has recognized that the guns are weapons. The guns turn into fishes and pull everybody who does not throw them down. They turn into fishes in their hands, they fuse to their hands, and then they pull them into the water where those guns eat the expeditioners. James Lowry, upon first seeing it transform into this fish, throws it on the ground, which saves his life, unfortunately. Another strange interlude, but also very creepy. The Beach of Bones and the Death Destroyer. So they come upon a beach full of bones, and in the distance is an old like Navy destroyer. And Sky and Winters, two of the people from the expedition, they want to go across the bay into the destroyer and see what's out there. Lowry is like, no, fuck that. We're not doing that. Apparently, at some point, the bones from that destroyer, which was trapped inside of Area X after the border came down, the bones from that washed up on the beach, creating a beach full of just bones, skulls, femurs, what have you, which is super creepy. I think that this might be modeled after the scene in Annihilation the movie when she's heading towards the lighthouse and she finds the bones on the beach. I wonder if this is a reference to that or if this is something that VanderMeer was like, this will be a creepy image. There is a green rowboat at the beach, and Winters is like, well, we'll just take the rowboat across. We'll see what's going on inside the destroyer, and then we'll come back. So he and Sky get into the green rowboat while they're, oh my God. While they are sailing across the bay towards the, while they are rowing across the bay towards the destroyer, Lowry is just shouting at them. He's like, please, Sky, I gave you flowers. I gave you a ring. Come back to me. Why are you doing this? Just come back to me. We'll work it out. The next day, the green rowboat returns, but Sky and Winters do not. So he has this map of places in the Forgotten Coast that he's supposed to check out. He goes to the old decontamination plant, and he finds this hall of barrels where Captain Thistle was shoving people into barrels, and he is freaked the fuck out because, like, what is this? How does this happen? Like, who did this? He goes to City Hall and he explores the hidden room, the City Hall in Deadtown. And he explores the hidden room, and he finds a molted husk of a person with the sign "Do Not Eat" on top of it. I don't know about you guys. If I found the molted husk of a person, I would probably not eat it. But Lowry, being a contrarian, sees the sign that says "Do Not Eat," and he starts consuming this husk of a body. When he gets to the head, he lifts it up and he looks at it, and we finally get to find out who the rogue was. Last chance to get your guesses in. You guessed that it was Whitby. You are correct. I thought that it was going to be John Control, because John Control jumped into the light at the end of Acceptance. I thought that the light was going to take him back in time as like an attempt to colonize the past, and we were going to find out that John Control was the rogue at the end of it. Nope. VanderMeer got one over on me. So Whitby is the rogue. He has traveled back in time in order to try to make sure that Area X is destroyed. We're not quite sure how he has come into the past. It may be that after the border fell and he was trapped inside, he somehow found his own way back into the past. It may be that these alternate futures are kind of converging and implanting him in different pasts. But he has been somehow transferred into the past. He became friends with the Tyrant. The Tyrant may be like a parallel to his mouse. I'm not quite sure how to parse that relationship. But we finally found out who the rogue was. He goes up onto the roof, not Whitby. Lowry. Lowry goes up onto the roof and he is looking out over Deadtown when Winter's doppelganger comes up and starts talking to him. They talk back and forth for a minute, and then James Lowry is like, "Hey, what's that?" And Winters approaches the edge, and Lowry just pushes him off the edge. Um, he goes to the lighthouse where there are hundreds of bodies pouring out of the lighthouse, just hundreds of corpses, and they're all of the same person, Henry Cage, who was the first person that we're aware of that Area X turned into a doppelganger. So these are quite probably copies that Area X has made of Henry Cage's dead body. If there's a purpose, I can't parse it. It's probably just the machine like producing extra copies of Henry because it was the first one that it knew, and then dumping them out of the lighthouse. He makes his way to the village bar and he goes to the piano, which we know is significant, and he opens it up, and the letters that old Jim had written to his daughter come pouring out of the piano. That's apparently where he stashed them in order to keep them close to him, because both the piano and his letters to Cass were important to him, and that's the kind of sentimental person he was. While Lowry is in the village bar, Hargraves, who we thought was lost, enters into the bar with an automatic weapon, and she is talking with him, and she has been given her own secret mission, which is to shoot him. She reveals that she is the false daughter. She is Cass from the Forgotten Coast. Lowry had a question of whether the real Cass ever existed, and Hargraves appears to confirm that she did in fact exist. There was a daughter named Cass, and she did ghost her father, but Hargraves says, she was nothing to write home about. He would have been better off with me, which is a weird thing to say about your adopted father. One important thing that we get to learn about here is that Jack has a rule of threes. He always operates in threes. So there's a clown or a jester who is supposed to take the heat off of the others in the operation. There's the person who's actually working the operation. And then there is somebody there for cleanup. So in the Forgotten Coast chapters with Old Jim was the clown or the jester character. He was supposed to take the heat off of the other people working the case. Cass was the one who was actually working the case. She was the one who was actually making the connections and trying to get to a conclusion. And then Commander Thistle was the cleanup. In this case, we've got Lowry, who is the clown or the jester who's taking the heat off the other people. Hargraves is the one who's actually working the case. We're not quite sure who the cleanup was. Who is the cleanup on this mission? Is there another operative that we haven't seen yet? Hargraves shoots Lowry in the face, but he does not die. He runs out of the village bar. He heads back down to the coast to the green boat, and he sees Landry sitting in the boat. And Landry is like, "Come on in. We'll get you out of here." So he goes and sits in the green boat with Landry, but he quickly realizes that it is not Landry. It is a doppelganger, and it's not a boat. It's some kind of mouth. And so he topples over the side right before the mouth closes up on him, and he heads back to the doorway between Area X and the outside. Once he gets to the doorway, once he gets to this gateway, he finds a contamination suit, a single contamination suit. The rest of them have disappeared, and he looks at the decontamination suit, and the suit starts talking to him as though it knows him. And he asks, "Has anyone else come through here?" And the suit says, "Hargraves came through here earlier." And he asks, "Did she make it out?" And the suit's like, "She came through here." And so he sits down next to the suit, and they just kind of sit there for a while. And he's like, "Once I'm ready, I'll get into the suit and I'll head out." And that's where the novel ends. So we are at an hour and 15 minutes. And I've missed a section, so I have to go back and record that as well. So we are at an hour and 15 minutes of just the summary of the book. I'm going to take a drink of tea again, and then I'll go into a little bit of analysis about this book and the other Southern Reach novels, and then I will let you guys go. I hope that you guys have enjoyed this journey. It's been a lot, but it's been a lot of fun as well. So, first off, let's talk about identity and what central authority can do to an identity. So we've got the biologists in the first part. They have been completely stripped of names. They are given nicknames by old Jim when he's like restructuring the thing at the end after it's all done. But he only knows them as like Team Leader 1, Team Leader 2, the Mutter, the Medic, things like that. I said I was going to take a drink of tea and then I didn't. So they central authority has stripped all of these people of their names and their identities, and this has led to them becoming paranoid. It has led to them becoming like objects for central to play with. And it has ultimately led to their own annihilation through their paranoia and through their not understanding like the way of the world and what is happening around them. They don't have the tools that they need to succeed. This is something that Cass brings up in the second part of the novel. She's like, I feel like I've been stranded here. I'm on a desert island and I don't have the things that I need to be successful. And old Jim is like, we always have the things that we need to be successful. She's like, I'm not so sure. You could also apply that to authority. John Control is brought in to kind of clean up the mess of the former director, but he's not really given the information he needs to do that. He's not really given what his primary mission is. He's just kind of like there. So he was never given the things that he needed to be successful either. You could kind of say that like if he had realized Gloria was the director earlier, then he might have been able to stop the expansion of Area X, but would he have been? Did anything that he do impede it at all? Could he have done anything to stop it? Yeah. It seems like Central is not able to provide anything of value towards like stopping Area X. It's all the people there on the ground who are able to do things. It's Whitby, it's John Control, and it is the biologist. The manipulation and the spy games in the second part of the novel, Jack's playing spy games essentially against himself. We find out about this faction called the Brutes. We don't know what they want or what they're doing or anything about that. But Jack sent in old Jim to work the case, and then he sent in Commander Thistle to clean up old Jim. It's said in one of the novels that he's all about family. He really likes John Control. He really likes Lowry, and he like takes these agents of his under his wing, and then he is like loyal to them. I think that it's said in the second part of this novel as well. I don't see that at all. Also, one of the hypnotic suggestions from this novel is check beneath the seat cushion, which is something that he said to John Control when John Control was a kid. And that's when Jack gave him his first gun. And then Jackie Severance came out, found John Control sitting there with the gun, pulled him out of the car and was like, don't listen to your grandfather. So strange connection there as well. Was Jack Severance like grooming John Control through hypnotic suggestion to do something eventually? Is that why John Control has such like a messed up thought pattern? Is that why he is able to eventually like become the weapon against Area X? A lot there to unpack. The False Daughter Project, that's super creepy. Central is creating its own doppelgangers. It's using agents as doppelgangers in order to manipulate people. Super disturbing. The main villain of this novel and of Authority is Central, right? It's the main antagonist. Everything that could go wrong, and everything that does go wrong has links back to Central and the spy games that Jack Severance is playing. The biologists, it's fun that there is a group of biologists this time. We do know 2 biologists. We know the original biologist, and then we know Ghostbird. But we get to see like a proto-biologists in proto Area X type situation, which is kind of cool. I forgot to talk about the missing member of the expedition of the biologists. So when he's talking to the medic, old Jim finds out that there were 25 members of the expedition, but one of them was told to walk through the alligators while holding a tray just to test if they would actually do it. And so the member of the expedition was holding like a drink tray and walking among the alligators when one of the alligators got it. And apparently Central just scrubbed them from the records. It was like, yeah, there were always only 24 people there. Yeah. Can you imagine what would happen if like actual biologists got to go and do their jobs and weren't being used as like experiments for the mind control thing? Could have learned so much there. We get a little bit more about the Seance and Science Brigade. There are factions within the Seance and Science Brigade. Henry appears to be leading one of these factions and making moves against Jack, trying to get more funding, trying to figure out more and unravel the secrets of the universe and unravel the secrets of what is in the lighthouse and what is in the lighthouse lens. He is forming his own faction while Jack is using it as like a homegrown like militia type situation. All of that is destroyed when apparently the psychics in the submersible set fire to the submersible, and then there's a fire back in at Failure Island. We get to see this fire at Failure Island in Acceptance as well. Saul looks through the telescope and sees it. So we know approximately like when this is happening. It's happening at approximately the same time as Acceptance. So that's a cool connection. I think kind of the through line of the 4 novels and the overarching theme of the 4 novels, it's all about like loss of control and not being able to account for every little thing and being blindsided by what you don't know and can't know. There's so many things throughout the novels where it's unexplained for us, the audience, and you can make connections there. You can kind of like form your own theory of it. There's plenty of evidence in the books for something that could have happened. This could be an explanation for it. We do get an explanation for what Area X is. We do get like explanation for how it came to be, but there's always ambiguity there. And there's always something else that it could be as well. And so like whenever an authority like Central or John Control or anyone else comes in and is trying to like take over Area X or find the off switch or figure out what it is and what it does, they always end up coming up short because there's always things that they're not going to know. And there's always things that they can't know. And a lot of the characters in these novels are just doomed by their inability to recognize that fact, that eventually there will be something that they don't know or can't know, and that is going to be their ultimate undoing. So, yeah. That was a lot, and I still have a little bit more to go, so I'm going to get out of here. Let me know what you thought about these novels. Did you like Absolution? Have you liked the Area X novels? Would you like me to read more Jeff VanderMeer? I'm about to do the 100 novel challenge, so I'm not going to have as much reading time, but possibly I could get to another Jeff VanderMeer novel, or I could get to something else if you think that I should get away from Jeff VanderMeer. Let me know if you'd like to see any particular novels or any particular storylines or anything like that. Yeah. Thank you as always for watching. I love you. I'll see you in the next video. Good night.